What's up, everybody? I'm Katie McHugh, and this is For Your Misinformation, a podcast dedicated to making politics more accessible and less hopeless. My goal is to empower people, especially women, to become more politically engaged so we can act in our own best interests. Let me identify the problem and tell you exactly how we can solve it. On Mondays, I break down topics like voter suppression, impeachment, the war on drugs, white supremacy, and then talk about ways that we can help the most. That might be donating to a charitable organization, voting in a local election, going to a rally, following activists on social media, or whatever else I can think of. On Wednesdays, I talk about specific politicians, whether I support them, and who you might want to vote for instead. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself so you can decide whether my opinion is even worth listening to. Like I said, my name is Katie. I'm 28 years old. I owe a lot of my self-esteem to Lizzo. I get depressed when I think about the last season of Game of Thrones. I like dresses with pockets. I've always been really interested in politics, feminism, and race relations. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is my hero. But more than anything else, I'm just sick and tired of Donald Trump and everything that he stands for. I decided to start this podcast after noticing that I was the political expert all my friends turned to when they had questions, and that most of their questions were pretty much the same. You know how you have that one friend you go to for skincare advice? Well, my friends kept coming to me for political advice. They seem to trust me to be informed because they know that I pay attention all the time. I'm never not paying attention to politics. It's like the NFL, The Bachelor, and Secession all rolled into one for me, except it's real and it impacts all of our lives in big, big ways. Let me explain how and why and easy ways that you can help. Do you need advice on how to talk to your racist uncle about watching more than just Fox News? No problem. Wondering what the deal is with voter suppression and what is being done to help expand the electorate? There's an episode about that. What about the history of slavery in the United States and what that has to do with the war on drugs? Why the fuck do we even use the Electoral College? What's really going on with Russia, Ukraine, and impeachment? Well, I'll tell you. I'm not going to pretend to be unbiased. I have opinions. I'm a person. Full disclosure, I'm a white girl who grew up in a middle-class suburb of Chicago, and now I live in a different suburb of Chicago. I generally try to operate by Kristen Bell's life rule, maximize happiness and minimize suffering. I believe children should be vaccinated and that Republicans in Congress are not taking climate change nearly as seriously as they should be. I legitimately miss Barack Obama. I cried a little bit when I voted for Hillary because I thought I just voted for the first female president. I also stayed home from work the day after Trump got elected because I couldn't believe such an obviously racist, sexist asshole had just become president. Ever since then, I've been reading as much as I can and looking to experts for answers. You know how it felt like you'd just gotten punched in the gut when you found out Trump got elected? Well, some people saw it coming and they weren't surprised. So I looked to those people to figure out how they knew. And it's because they studied authoritarianism and white supremacy and they saw the writing on the wall. Isn't that terrifying? New Year's resolution 2020, we're only listening to people whose advice we would actually value. And my favorite experts to listen to are Sarah Kendzior, a journalist and scholar of authoritarian states, Malcolm Nance, veteran and former U.S. intelligence officer, Andrea Chalupa, activist and screenwriter, and Lauren Duca, journalist. In the past 3 years, everything I've learned boils down to these 2 points. 1, we're being gaslit by the Trump administration. In 2016, I didn't know the phenomenon had a name, but basically gaslighting means to manipulate somebody by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. We're being gaslit right now by the Trump administration into believing that they aren't, to quote my favorite podcast, Gaslit Nation, a transnational crime syndicate masquerading as a government. The second thing that I've noted is that we all just have to do something. We have to make democracy a part of our routines by doing what we can when we can. That's all it comes down to. There are more of us than there are of them. There are more good guys than there are bad guys. If we all do a little bit, if we all do our part, we will win. I know it feels hopeless and helpless sometimes, but that's how Trump and his administration want us to feel. Us feeling that way only benefits those in power. We have to have class solidarity. The solution is to educate and empower ourselves, especially women, and it's really the white women who have to do better on this. 1 in 2 white women voted for Trump in 2016, okay? That's half of us. That's embarrassing. We can do better than that. So bit by bit, we'll push back on the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress who support him, which is all the Republicans in Congress, by the way, because everyone can do something. We can all do a little bit. We can all do our part. I know it feels like you're busy and you can't add another thing to your day, but not only is this really important, it's also really interesting. I promise, this is like bachelorette level drama sometimes. You're gonna wanna know what's going on. So let me help you break it down, how you can decide who to vote for and where to devote your time and energy and money. Because this is like a time that's crazier than Watergate, okay? No more savior syndrome. No one's coming to save us, especially not the Republicans in Congress, so we have to save ourselves. I promise to identify the problem or the bad guy and give you actionable steps to help, which, speaking from experience, alleviate some anxiety because you're actually doing something to solve the problem. The way I see it, American democracy is an experiment, but if we don't all actively participate, it's gonna fail and continue to fail. We can't just show up every 2 years or 4 years to vote. Democracy is something that you do, so let's find ways to incorporate it more regularly. Because the last thing we want in November 2020 is to think to ourselves, we wish we'd done more. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe to this podcast. And if you like it, give me a rating and a review. It makes it easier for other people to find me, and the more of us there are, the better. I come out with new episodes every Monday and Wednesday. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at FYMI pod. Shout out to Hope Dye for the podcast art and Kyle Dibdahl for the intro and outro music. I'd like to thank Lauren Duca, Sarah Kenzier, Andrea Chalupa, Brene Brown, Lizzo, AOC, Nancy Pelosi, Karen Kilgariff, Georgia Hardstark, and Marie Newman for their inspiration, and also my mom. And I'd like to thank you for listening.